The sun rises over the South China Sea. The water sparkles, but tension simmers just beneath the surface. A Philippine Coast Guard vessel approaches the gray reef of Scarborough Shoal. On the horizon, Chinese Coast Guard ships block the entrance to the lagoon. Over the radio, a stern voice blares, a warning to stay away. Filipino crew members grip the railing, watching the much larger Chinese ships close in. The standoff has become a routine dance. Sometimes, the Chinese aim water cannons at Filipino boats. Sometimes, they shadow fishermen for hours. Both sides record footage, each claiming their rights. The Filipino crew does not back down, but their orders are clear: avoid escalation, hold the line, and document every move. Each encounter adds to the stress. It's not a shooting war, but it is a contest of nerves. The world watches this small patch of ocean, knowing the wrong move could trigger a bigger crisis. For now, restraint and resolve define the Philippine response. Scarborough Shoal is a triangle-shaped reef located about 120 nautical miles west of Luzon, the largest island in the Philippines. Known locally as Bajo de Masinloc or Panatag Shoal, it covers about 150 square kilometers. The shoal consists of a ring of rocks and reefs, surrounding a shallow lagoon teeming with marine life. Scarborough Shoal's strategic location gives it huge importance. It sits near vital shipping lanes. It is also rich in fish and possibly natural gas. For Filipino fishermen, this is a traditional fishing ground. For the government, it marks the edge of the country's exclusive economic zone, or EEZ. China claims almost the entire South China Sea, including Scarborough Shoal, based on its 9-dash line. The Philippines, supported by international law, says the shoal lies within its EEZ. This makes the area a flashpoint for conflict and diplomacy. Both countries see Scarborough Shoal as more than just rocks in the sea. It is a symbol of sovereignty, resources, and national pride. That is why neither side wants to back down. The story of Scarborough Shoal goes back centuries. Filipino fishermen have used its waters for generations. Historical maps from the Spanish colonial era mention the area as part of Philippine territory. After World War II, the Philippines inherited these claims. China's claim is newer. In the late 1940s, China drew a vague 9-dash line around the South China Sea. This line covers almost 90% of the sea, including Scarborough Shoal. China argues that ancient Chinese sailors visited these waters, giving them historic rights. Tensions escalated in 2012. That year, Chinese and Filipino ships faced off over fishing rights. After weeks of standoff, China took control of the shoal by physically blocking access to Filipino fishermen. Since then, Chinese ships have maintained a near-constant presence. The Philippines has repeatedly protested China's actions. It argues that history cannot override modern international law. The dispute is about more than fish. It is about who controls the sea and its future. The Philippines turned to international law to defend its claims. In 2013, the country filed a case at the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. The main argument: China's 9-dash line has no legal basis under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. In July 2016, the tribunal delivered a landmark ruling. The court said China's historic claims are invalid. It found that Scarborough Shoal lies within the Philippine EEZ. The ruling also criticized China's interference with Philippine fishing rights and its environmental damage to reefs. China rejected the decision, calling it null and void. But most of the world, including the United States and the European Union, supported the ruling. For the Philippines, the Hague victory is a powerful legal and diplomatic tool. However, international law is only as strong as the willingness of countries to follow it. Without enforcement, the ruling remains a moral victory. The challenge is how to turn legal rights into real control, without resorting to war. Since the Hague ruling, Chinese presence at Scarborough Shoal has only increased. Chinese Coast Guard and militia vessels patrol the area daily. They use water cannons, deploy floating barriers, and block Filipino fishing boats. Sometimes Chinese ships use aggressive maneuvers to intimidate Philippine vessels. In 2023 and 2024, several high-profile incidents occurred. Chinese ships fired water cannons at Filipino supply boats. Videos went viral, sparking outrage in the Philippines. The government summoned the Chinese ambassador to protest these actions. Filipino fishermen report being chased away, losing income and risking safety. China has also built artificial islands in other parts of the South China Sea. There are fears that Scarborough Shoal could be next. Satellite images show increased Chinese activity, raising alarms in Manila and Washington. Despite these provocations, the Philippines has avoided direct military confrontation. Each incident tests the resolve and strategy of Filipino leaders. The stakes are high, but so is the risk of war. The Philippines faces a difficult task, defending its rights without provoking a shooting war. The first tool is diplomacy. Manila regularly files diplomatic protests against Chinese actions. These notes build a record of Chinese violations and keep the issue alive internationally. Another tool is the Coast Guard. The Philippines now sends regular patrols to Scarborough Shoal. These patrols document Chinese activities, protect Filipino fishermen, and show Philippine presence. The law enforcement approach is less provocative than sending Navy ships, lowering the risk of escalation. The Philippines also seeks support from allies and friends. It brings the issue to international forums like ASEAN and the United Nations. Publicizing Chinese actions builds global pressure, making it harder for Beijing to act unchecked. A final tool is communication. Social media and news coverage ensure that every incident is seen worldwide. This transparency is a shield, deterring China by exposing its actions to the world. The Philippines cannot face China alone. That is why alliances matter. The United States is a key partner. The two countries have a mutual defense treaty, which says they will help each other if attacked. In recent years, the U.S. has increased joint patrols and military support for the Philippines. Japan, Australia, and the European Union also support Philippine claims. These countries provide training, equipment, and diplomatic backing. Multilateral exercises in the South China Sea send a message that the region is not China's alone. Diplomacy is about building coalitions. The Philippines works with ASEAN, calling for a binding code of conduct in the South China Sea. It invites outside powers to observe and support. Each alliance strengthens Manila's position and raises the cost of aggression for China. But alliances do not guarantee automatic support in every crisis. The Philippines must balance assertiveness with caution, making sure it does not draw friends into conflict without cause. War is easy to start, but almost impossible to control. For both the Philippines and China, the costs would be enormous. The Philippines' military is much smaller than China's. A direct clash could devastate lives, destroy livelihoods, and destabilize the whole region. China, too, has reasons to avoid war. Open conflict would damage its global reputation and threaten its economic interests. The South China Sea is a vital trade route. Any fighting would disrupt shipping, harm economies, and risk drawing in outside powers like the U.S. Most importantly, ordinary people would suffer most. Filipino fishermen, Chinese sailors, and civilians on both sides would bear the brunt. History shows that war leaves scars for generations. That is why both sides, even as they clash at sea, try to avoid the point of no return. Restraint, backed by strong diplomacy and steady alliances, is the only viable strategy for peace. If the Philippines stands its ground peacefully, several outcomes are possible. First, China might continue its pressure, but growing international support could deter it from taking more drastic steps. The world's attention makes it harder for China to escalate without consequences. A second outcome is negotiation. Continued diplomatic efforts, especially in partnership with allies, could lead to practical agreements. These might allow Filipino fishermen limited access, or set up joint patrols for safety. A third possibility is slow progress through international law and forums. Each diplomatic protest, each patrol, builds a legal and moral case that can be used for future talks. Over time, China may adjust its tactics to avoid further isolation. The key is that the Philippines can defend its rights without war, using patience, alliances, and the rule of law. Peaceful resistance is not weakness, it is a long game. In the end, the world respects those who choose justice over violence.